In everyone's life, there are moments when it seems that fate opens the gates to a new reality. Be it a tempting job offer, a promising startup, or a budding relationship that takes your breath away. You can feel the potential in the air, almost palpable, but something inside seems to hold you back, preventing you from taking a decisive step towards your dream. This is an inexplicable hesitation, an internal resistance, that invisible force commonly known as self-sabotage. Imagine your hand is already reaching for the doorknob, behind which lies everything you've ever dreamed of, but at the last moment, it freezes in indecision. Self-sabotage is a term often used when a person feels like they are throwing a wrench in their own works. But few people think about the underlying reasons for this phenomenon. It is often seen as simply a lack of discipline or a weakness of character, but the truth is much more complex and multifaceted. Carl Jung, a prominent Swiss psychiatrist and psychoanalyst, argued that the roots of self-sabotage run deep into the unconscious. This area hides thoughts, emotions, and desires that often go unnoticed but have a tremendous impact on behavior. Jung's work opens new horizons in understanding this complex phenomenon, offering not only to understand its nature, but also to find ways to overcome it. So, what lies behind the concept of unconscious? In essence, it is a vast area of our mind, inaccessible to direct awareness. It is like a huge repository where events suppressed from memory, unrealized aspirations, unlived emotional experiences, and behavioral patterns formed throughout life are carefully stored. As the eminent psychologist Carl Jung argued that the deep motives that determine our actions often originate in this unconscious sphere, even if we are not aware of it. Imagine an iceberg majestically rising above the surface of the ocean. The human consciousness is only its visible peak, while the main mass, hidden from view, is the unconscious, subtly directing our actions, sometimes in ways incomprehensible to us. Now let's consider why understanding the unconscious is so important. Self-destructive behavior arises in situations where there is a dissonance between conscious intentions and subconscious fears or unresolved internal conflicts. For example, a person may sincerely strive for career advancement, but deep down they may be tormented by a fear of possible failure or even of success itself, rooted in past negative experiences. These hidden fears can manifest as procrastination, a striving for excessive perfectionism, or other destructive patterns of behavior, thereby hindering the achievement of consciously set goals. In Jungian psychology, these deeply rooted fears and innermost desires form what Carl Jung called the shadow, hidden corners of our self that we stubbornly refuse to acknowledge. The shadow, as the cornerstone of Jungian analysis, represents the dark, hidden facets of our essence. It encompasses everything that we have ever suppressed, rejected, or discarded, considering it unacceptable or dangerous to our self-perception. This can be a whole range of feelings and experiences, from banal fears, outbursts of anger, and bouts of jealousy to deep psychological traumas that have left an indelible mark on our soul. It is important to understand that the shadow is not by its nature an embodiment of evil or vice. It is simply those aspects of our personality that we avoid encountering. And here's where it gets interesting. The more desperately we try to ignore or suppress these parts of ourselves, the more power they gain over us. Jung argued that what we resist only gets stronger. In other words, when we banish certain traits of our personality into the unconscious, they do not disappear without a trace. On the contrary, they continue to influence our behavior from the shadows, often undermining our conscious intentions. This is one of the main mechanisms of self-sabotage. We naively believe that we are in control of the situation, while the unconscious, like a puppeteer, pulls the strings, determining the course of events. Surely everyone has encountered a situation when, despite realizing the destructiveness of certain behavioral patterns, they continue to reproduce them. Remember how often you set ambitious goals for yourself, but as you approached their realization, you encountered inexplicable obstacles. Procrastination, insecurity in your own abilities, searching for excuses to abandon endeavors. All these are not random manifestations of weakness, but symptoms of a deeper internal conflict, a clash between conscious aspirations and subconscious forces. Carl Jung, the eminent Swiss psychologist and philosopher, believed that the key to overcoming self-sabotage lies in the process of individuation, becoming a whole person through the integration of conscious and unconscious aspects of the psyche. This process involves acknowledging the so-called shadow, the totality of repressed fears, suppressed desires, and unacceptable aspects of personality. Confronting these dark corners of the subconscious and bringing them into the light of awareness is a necessary condition for personal growth and self-realization. As Jung once remarked, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. This is the essence of the journey to overcoming self-sabotage, in recognizing and accepting those parts of ourselves that we have long tried to hide and suppress. It is a path to harmony with oneself, to liberation from internal limitations, and to the unlocking of one's true potential. How does this complex yet necessary process begin? How can one engage in a confrontation with one's own shadow? And more importantly, how can one learn to integrate it into conscious life? The starting point here is awareness. The first and perhaps most important step on the path to overcoming self-sabotage is identifying persistent patterns in one's own life. This involves recognizing recurring patterns of behavior, obsessive thoughts, and uncontrollable emotions that, like an anchor, prevent progress. This process requires extreme honesty with oneself, the ability to deeply self-reflect, and, most importantly, a willingness to face those aspects of one's personality that one may have long preferred to ignore. This is no easy task, requiring courage and patience, but it is absolutely necessary if there is a sincere desire to break free from the vicious cycle of self-destruction. In further exploration of this topic, we will turn to the teachings of Carl Jung, the distinguished Swiss psychologist and philosopher, to understand how to translate the contents of the unconscious into the realm of consciousness. We will consider how this process can radically change a person's life, opening new horizons of self-knowledge and personal growth. We will analyze the tools and methods proposed by Jung for a constructive confrontation with the shadow and suggest ways to adapt them to an individual's path of self-development. In the meantime, it is worth pondering the following questions. What patterns of behavior in your life, despite conscious attempts to change them, repeat time and again? In what areas do you feel that you are hindering yourself and holding back your potential? Take some time to reflect on these questions. Keep them in mind as you continue to move forward. There is much more to discover, and as you delve into these deep layers of the psyche, it will become clear that the key to overcoming self-sabotage lies not in an exhausting struggle with oneself, but in a deep understanding and integration of all, even the darkest, aspects of one's mind. In the following lines, we will turn our gaze to the origins of self-destructive behavior rooted in the depths of our unconscious, and consider ways to regain lost control over our own destiny. Prepare yourselves, for the revelations to come have the power to forever change your perception of yourself and the world around you. So, after a brief introduction to the concepts of the unconscious and the shadow, it is time to delve deeper into the mechanism of self-sabotage formation. It is not enough to simply be aware of its existence. It is necessary to penetrate the essence of its origin and understand the reasons for its powerful influence on us. According to the eminent psychologist Carl Jung, self-sabotage is often a consequence of unresolved internal conflicts tearing our psyche apart. It is a clash between our conscious aspirations and our subconscious perception of what is safe and acceptable. Imagine this: throughout life's journey, each of us has encountered moments of pain, rejection, or failure. These experiences leave indelible emotional scars, especially at a young age. We, consciously or unconsciously, learn to avoid situations that could cause similar suffering in the future. For example, if your early endeavors were met with criticism, you may experience a fear of failure in adulthood and, as a result, avoid any risk. This early experience shapes our unconscious and creates fertile ground for the development of self-destructive behavior. However, paradoxically, such a strategy aimed at avoiding momentary emotional torment ultimately hinders the full realization of one's potential. Apprehensions, whether fear of failure, fear of criticism, or even fear of triumph, can push a person towards self-limitation, often unconsciously. Over time, these underlying fears penetrate the consciousness so deeply that they begin to be perceived as an integral part of the personality, which makes self-sabotage such a discouraging phenomenon. It resembles an internal conflict, where the desire for progress clashes with invisible forces holding back forward movement. Carl Jung's contribution sheds light on understanding this inner struggle. He believed that the roots of these fears and limiting beliefs often lie in so-called complexes, clusters of emotionally charged memories, thoughts, and feelings hidden in the unconscious mind. A complex is formed when experiencing a situation that evokes powerful emotions that are not properly processed or resolved. Instead, emotions are suppressed into the unconscious, where they continue to influence thoughts, actions, and perceptions, often without awareness of this influence. For example, consider a person prone to a failure complex. Perhaps their upbringing involved constant comparison to others or instilling a sense of inadequacy. Over time, such experiences formed a stable complex associated with the fear of failure. Even with a conscious desire for success, their subconscious continues to operate on the belief in the inevitability of failure or that success will only bring disappointment. As a result, they may resort to self-sabotage by procrastinating, avoiding difficult tasks, or prematurely abandoning their endeavors. The complex is like a knot in the psyche, which, remaining untied, continues to influence behavior, perpetuating self-sabotage. Carl Jung was convinced that awareness is the cornerstone in the process of overcoming psychological complexes. By bringing these deep structures from the shadows of the unconscious into the light of consciousness, a person can understand their origins and how they shape their behavior and perception of the world. This path, however, does not promise to be easy and serene. Complexes, like old wounds, often awaken a storm of strong emotions, as their roots go back to unresolved conflicts, painful experiences, and psychological traumas. Nevertheless, it is the confrontation with these difficult feelings that becomes the first step towards healing and liberation from their destructive influence. So how do you start this difficult process of identifying and unraveling the complexes that subtly affect our feelings and actions? It is important to remember that complexes are often activated in certain situations or in the presence of specific people who, consciously or not, remind us of past experiences. For example, if a person experiences inexplicable anxiety or an excessive need for protection in certain circumstances, this may be a sign that one of their complexes has come into play. In such cases, it is recommended to pay attention to the moments when these emotional reactions occur and ask yourself questions. What does this remind me of? When have I experienced something similar before? This process of self-analysis and reflection plays a crucial role in bringing unconscious patterns of behavior to the level of consciousness. Jung believed that the deeper our awareness of our own complexes and the emotions they evoke, the less power they have over us. He said, "We cannot change what we do not accept. Condemnation does not liberate, it oppresses." By recognizing and accepting those parts of ourselves that we have long tried to avoid, a person initiates a process of integration, becoming a more complete and harmonious personality. At the heart of the Jungian concept of individuation lies integration, a process that seeks to harmonize the conscious and unconscious aspects of the human psyche in order to rid the individual of internal contradictions. It is not about eradicating shadow sides or suppressing complexes, but about developing a constructive approach to them, allowing you to expand the boundaries of personal capabilities rather than narrow them. The path of integrating the shadow and resolving internal conflicts opens the door to ending self-destructive actions and confidently moving towards realizing one's true potential. But how can this process of integration and individuation be practically implemented? One of the effective tools proposed by Jung is active imagination, a method of direct interaction with the unconscious through dialogue, visual images, or creative self-expression. In the process of active imagination, a person allows the unconscious to express itself through dreams, visions, or sudden thoughts. By interacting with these images and symbols, they gain valuable information about the deep aspects of their personality and begin to integrate them into their conscious perception. Another technique that Carl Jung singled out was a close analysis of dreams. In his deep conviction, dreams are a kind of portal into the depths of the unconscious, revealing invaluable clues to our internal contradictions and unresolved dilemmas. By paying close attention to our dreams and carefully reflecting on their symbolic subtext, we can gain a deeper understanding of the subconscious forces that drive our actions. Of course, this process requires a great deal of patience and compassion towards oneself. Confronting the unconscious is not always smooth, and the temptation may arise to revert to old, tried and true methods of avoidance or suppression. However, it is important to remember that self-sabotage is not a fixed state, but merely a reflection of an unresolved internal conflict. And once this conflict is brought to light, we will have a real opportunity to resolve it. In the next chapter, we will explore how to put these ideas into practice. We will examine specific strategies aimed at breaking the vicious cycle of self-sabotage and fostering personal growth. By the end of this fascinating journey, you will gain a deeper understanding of the mechanisms of the unconscious, and more importantly, learn to harness its power to create the life you've always dreamed of. So stay tuned, because there are many more discoveries ahead. What awaits you may fundamentally change your approach to life and to the deepest problems. The answers you have been searching for so long are already within you, and it is only a matter of bringing them to light. Continuing the exploration of the phenomenon of self-sabotage, it is worth shifting attention to specific strategies for overcoming this destructive behavior. Having begun to study the depths of the subconscious and its hidden influence on actions, a person takes an important step, but awareness of the problem alone is not enough. The main question is how to turn this understanding into constructive action, how to break the vicious cycle of self-destruction and embark on the path of realizing one's potential. In this context, Carl Jung's teachings offer not only deep psychological analysis, but also effective recommendations for personal transformation. The most important principle he emphasized is that personal growth and getting rid of self-sabotage are impossible without confronting internal discomfort, which requires painstaking work on oneself. It is not enough to simply acknowledge the influence of the unconscious. it is necessary to actively interact with it, bravely face one's fears, and take conscious steps to change behavioral patterns. Before continuing, it is worth looking inward and thinking about one's own life. Where does self-sabotage manifest itself? Are there specific areas, whether relationships with people, professional activities, or the pursuit of personal goals, where a person feels stagnation or constant restraint of their own potential? Identifying these areas is crucial, as self-sabotage rarely acts in isolation. Often, it manifests as persistent patterns of behavior that repeat in various areas of life, stemming from unresolved internal conflicts hidden in the depths of the unconscious. One of the most effective ways to break these destructive patterns is self-reflection. Carl Jung, the eminent Swiss psychologist, considered self-knowledge to be the cornerstone of personal growth, asserting that true transformation begins with an honest and impartial examination of one's own personality. However, self-reflection is not just superficial reflection on one's actions and motives. It requires a deeper immersion into the world of one's own emotions, fears, and desires. This is a process in which a person asks themselves complex and uncomfortable questions. What am I avoiding? What am I really afraid of? What aspects of my personality do I not want to face? Such self-examination can cause discomfort and anxiety, but at the same time, it has incredible liberating potential. As a person begins to uncover the unconscious fears and beliefs that fuel their self-sabotage, they gain the opportunity to change them, rewrite the script of their life, and direct energy into a creative channel. Often, the root of the fear of failure lies not in the fact of failure itself, but in the feeling of shame or fear of being rejected that is associated with it. Often, procrastination is not just a manifestation of laziness, but a defense mechanism that protects against the discomfort that arises when leaving the comfort zone. When these deep-seated fears and beliefs become conscious, their influence is significantly weakened. So how do you effectively deal with these fears? One of the most effective methods proposed by Jung is to directly confront one's shadow. This involves recognizing those aspects of the personality that have been suppressed or rejected, those traits that cause shame or fear. As mentioned earlier, the shadow does not have an exclusively negative character. It only reflects those aspects of the self that a person has rejected. Bringing these aspects into conscious awareness allows for their integration into a holistic personality, rather than allowing them to operate from the subconscious. Confronting the shadow requires considerable courage and honesty. This means a willingness to look at one's shortcomings, insecurities, and fears without judgment. It is important to realize that these aspects of personality are not weaknesses, but opportunities for personal growth. Jung believed that the process of individuation, that is, the integration of conscious and unconscious parts of the self, is the path to wholeness. By accepting their shadow, a person regains power lost in the process of suppression and begins to move forward, overcoming self-sabotage. One effective method of establishing contact with the shadow is journaling. It is recommended to set aside time each day to record your thoughts, feelings, and experiences, especially in moments when you feel internal resistance or a tendency toward self-sabotage. It is important to allow the stream of consciousness to flow freely onto the pages without resorting to self-censorship. This practice helps to identify unconscious patterns of behavior and beliefs that influence actions. Moreover, it creates a safe environment for exploring aspects of personality that are usually avoided. Another powerful tool proposed by Jung for working with the unconscious is dream analysis. He saw dreams as the royal road to the unconscious, providing direct access to the deep layers of the psyche. Paying attention to your dreams and reflecting on their symbolic meaning allows you to gain valuable insights into conflicts and aspirations hidden beneath the veil of consciousness. For example, recurring dreams or symbols may indicate unresolved internal contradictions or fears that provoke self-destructive behavior. By delving into these dreams, you can gradually unravel the complex networks of unconscious patterns that hinder personal growth and self-realization. However, it is important to realize that the process of self-knowledge should not be limited to reflection alone. Active actions play a defining role in overcoming the vicious cycle of self-destructive behavior. A person needs to take tangible steps to challenge identified negative patterns. This can be expressed in setting modest but realistic goals that force you to step outside of your comfort zone or in openly confronting a specific fear. The main thing is to start acting, even if it causes discomfort at first. Remember that self-sabotage flourishes where there is evasion and inaction. The bolder a person confronts their fears and the more confidently they move forward, the weaker the influence of self-destructive tendencies becomes. One effective method of combating self-sabotage is to form new beneficial habits that contribute to the achievement of goals. Habits, being the foundation of behavior, allow you to consciously restructure thinking and get rid of outdated, destructive models. For example, if procrastination is one of the forms of self-sabotage that a person is struggling with, you can develop the habit of devoting just 10 minutes to a task before taking a break. This small but controlled step can help overcome initial resistance and create momentum for achieving desired results. It is equally important to cultivate a deep sense of self-compassion throughout the journey of self-improvement. Overcoming self-sabotage is not a harsh condemnation for mistakes and failures, but rather an exploration of the reasons for such behavior and a caring attitude towards oneself in the process of working on oneself. Carl Jung argued that self-acceptance is the cornerstone of the individuation process. When a person accepts themselves completely with all their weaknesses and imperfections, they are freed from the need for self-destruction dictated by fear and shame. In the final part of the narrative, we will consider how all these concepts merge in the process of individuation and how Jung's ideas can become a compass, not only in the fight against self-sabotage, but also in creating a life that resonates with the true self. We will explore the deep spiritual aspects of Jung's legacy and how accepting your shadow can lead to a sense of wholeness and fulfillment. The path is not yet complete. The final piece of the puzzle will show how all the work done, awareness, action, integration, leads to sustainable personal transformation. The reader has come a long way, and the final part will bring everything together, capable of changing the perception of oneself, one's potential, and one's place in the world. As we approach the final stage of studying Carl Jung's ideas about overcoming self-destructive behavior, it is important to focus on the big picture, on the culmination of the inner work that has been discussed previously. The concept of individuation, touched upon earlier, represents the main goal of a person's psychological development. It's a complex process of becoming a whole person, uniting the conscious and unconscious aspects of the self so that they cease to be fragmented and contradictory. Self-sabotage, in essence, is a manifestation of internal discord, where desires, fears, and beliefs come into conflict, resulting in actions that hinder progress. Individuation offers a solution to these internal conflicts, calling for the acceptance of all parts of oneself, even those that have been rejected or suppressed, and moving towards a state of wholeness. Jung believed that individuation is not only a personal, but also a spiritual path, aimed at finding deep meaning and purpose in life through alignment with one's true self. Despite the complexity of the individuation process, which often requires confronting painful truths and abandoning societal expectations, It ultimately brings liberation and awareness of one's true essence. A person gains the strength to live authentically, freeing themselves from unconscious patterns of self-destruction. However, how does this manifest in real life? How do you know if you are truly progressing on the path of individuation, and how can you ensure that your efforts contribute to lasting changes in your personality? Carl Jung proposed a number of fundamental principles that can serve as a compass in this challenging journey. And in studying these principles, it's essential to realize that individuation is not a fleeting event, but a continuous process that encompasses the entire life. Each step taken to deepen self-awareness and integrate various aspects of the personality brings you closer to a more fulfilling and authentic life. One of the most significant principles that Jung emphasized is the concept of holding the tension between opposites. This refers to the ability to simultaneously hold in consciousness two seemingly mutually exclusive truths without seeking an immediate resolution to the resulting internal conflict. For example, a person may have a strong desire for success, but at the same time fear the responsibility that inevitably accompanies achievements. Or they may want to enter into close, trusting relationships but fear vulnerability. Instead of choosing one side, Jung urged people to hold the tension between these opposing forces, allowing a third, deeper, and more complex solution to emerge. This process often leads to unexpected discoveries, creative solutions, or significant personal breakthroughs that would have been impossible if the person had simply taken one side and ignored the other. Holding the tension plays a defining role in combating self-sabotage, as destructive actions often stem from an internal conflict between conscious desires and subconscious fears. A person may sincerely want progress, but underlying fears and doubts hinder their advancement. Recognizing this duality, the desire for development and the fear of failure, opens the way to a deeper understanding of the true motives behind behavior. This allows for finding new approaches to moving forward, considering both ambitions and emotional needs. No less important principle of individuation is the development of creative potential and imagination. Creativity, according to researchers, is a natural manifestation of the subconscious, a powerful tool for self-discovery. Whether it's visual arts, literature, music, or any other activity that requires imagination, it allows access to hidden aspects of the personality. It's a way to give shape to the unconscious and bring its insights to the level of consciousness. For example, when dealing with self-sabotage in a particular area of life, you can turn to creative self-expression to explore the underlying causes of the problem. You can draw an image of your fear, write a story about the part of yourself that is holding you back, or even engage in a dialogue with your inner critic through journaling. Such exercises allow you to interact with the unconscious directly, intuitively, uncovering ideas inaccessible to logical analysis. Carl Jung particularly emphasized the need to establish a strong connection with an entity that transcends the ego, and he designated it as the self, using a capital letter. In Jungian psychology, the self appears as the integral unity of the psyche, encompassing conscious and unconscious aspects. It is the center of human existence, a storehouse of inner wisdom and profound knowledge. Establishing a connection with the self opens access to a broader understanding of the purpose and meaning of life. This connection often arises as a result of practices aimed at deepening self-awareness, such as meditation, contemplation, as well as interaction with symbols and archetypes that resonate in the subconscious. On the path of integrating shadow aspects of personality and overcoming tendencies towards self-destruction, it is crucial to strengthen the connection with the self. This can be achieved through regular self-reflection, mindfulness practices, and engagement with spiritual traditions that resonate deeply. The goal isn't to avoid life's difficulties, but to face them with inner peace and purpose. Harmony with the self allows for more effective navigation of life's ups and downs, maintaining balance amidst unconscious fears and destructive behaviors. So what conclusions do we reach as we conclude our exploration? We've delved into the depths of the subconscious, examined the shadow aspects of personality, and considered complexes, those forces that subtly push us toward self-destruction. We've analyzed effective methods for combating these hidden motives, striving to break free from their grasp. And now we touch upon the very essence of Jungian psychology, the process of individuation and the vital connection to the archetype of the self, which is the center of our psychic wholeness. It's important to emphasize that the path to overcoming self-sabotage is not a straight and smooth road, but rather a winding path that requires constant self-reflection, courage, and unwavering commitment to personal growth. But it's also a journey that generously rewards those who dare to embark on it, as one gains a deeper understanding of their inner world and begins to accept the parts of themselves that they previously rejected or ignored. The need for self-destructive behavior gradually diminishes. Instead, the opportunity arises to move through life with greater awareness, self-confidence, and genuine authenticity. In conclusion, Carl Jung's ideas provide a powerful tool for understanding the nature of self-sabotage and effectively combating it. Through exploring the depths of the subconscious, integrating the shadow aspects of personality, and actively participating in the process of individuation, each person can break free from those outdated patterns of behavior that have hindered progress and begin to build a life in accordance with their true self. This path does not promise to be easy, but it invariably leads to profound transformations and the discovery of genuine meaning in life. As we conclude this video, the author encourages each viewer to turn to their personal experience of self-discovery. Where exactly does one put obstacles in their own way, and what aspects of their personality do they avoid? How would life change if one boldly faced their fears, armed with self-awareness and courage? The answers to these questions are hidden within each person, waiting for the moment they are uncovered. As you continue to explore the depths of your inner world, it's important to remember that striving for wholeness is not a pursuit of an unattainable ideal, but an acceptance of yourself in all your fullness, with all your strengths and weaknesses, and an awareness of the potential hidden within. The strength needed to overcome self-sabotage and find an authentic life is within everyone's reach. All that is required is a willingness to look inside, bravely face your inner demons, and trust the process of personal growth and transformation. And perhaps, in the end, one will discover that the very ideal they have been searching for has always been a part of themselves. The author thanks the viewers for their attention.